Some of the topics I'm going to try to blow through today, some of the save views and filters. Miles touched on some of this, so I won't go too far on that. Expiring inventory functionality, what the material availability check is looking at, our part transition function, part simulator, really cool. Load optimization, some different ways to use the load optimizer that we're seeing people use. Our distribution module, I'm going to just touch on, and then multi-source functionality where appropriate. Let me go ahead and switch over to the instance. There. Cool. Try that one more time. Thank you, sir. Great. Thank you. All right, let me try to slide this just a little bit. Okay, so the home screen, which many of you are very familiar with, and those are not, you'll get very familiar with it. Within the workbench, Miles was talking about how the homepage is configurable by user. So there is a plethora of information available either through these columns. So some of this information is Intuiflow generated. Some of it is from your ERP or system of record. You can add as much as you like. Something that we're seeing, I think kind of a reoccurring theme is doing more with less. The user-defined fields are available for you. So I think as people are trying to plan at either category levels, ABC classifications, items that are relevant for them, they want to see big chunks of information as opposed to going line by line. So expanding on just having it be by typical buyer or planner and location, you can start to do everything from pulling it all the way through for reporting and even down at the planning and scheduling level. So something that's really cool. If I have a view that I like, let's say I want to, Wally likes to look at things by location. You can see now I've got all this sorted down and grouped up by a particular location. I've got bottler and plant. See it so I can show everybody. So now that everything is grouped up and I'm happy with this, I can now save this view. I can either have this be my saved default view, meaning every time I log in as user Wally, this is what I'm going to see. I can save it in create a view. If maybe this is how I want to look at things on Mondays, and I want to look at things on Fridays in a different way. Or if I want to copy this URL and then share it. So there was the example if you can share it through your group and then have other people look at that same view. So you're looking at the same thing. Okay. Now let's talk expired inventory. Go back to my presentation here. This bottom screenshot is of our part inventory file. And I just wanted to highlight it to show you that we're capturing data as long as it's being loaded and maintained in your ERP system. So if you're capturing lot information and expiration date information, that information will be pulled over and pulled through and then leveraged into the net flow equation where appropriate. So let's go ahead and look at this particular part back in the tool. I apologize, I'm jumping back and forth, but I want you to be able to see it in the tool. Okay, so let's look at this guy here. So that was part 154286. Let's see what's going on there. Okay, see here, so in that Excel snapshot that I was showing you, so I've got two lots with expiration dates. This first lot for 55,000 pieces is set to expire 5/31. It's also qualified as a spike. And then I've got a lot set to expire in 7/10. My columns aren't opened up here, but that lot number and that lot ID information is also visible to you. I don't have an order recommendation for this, even though these 55,000 pieces are expiring, because if I take a look at the buffer sizing tab, my net flow is still in the green zone, right? So I haven't dipped into yellow. So although the inventory is expiring, it's not triggering an order recommendation. Now on the reporting side of the house, I know that many of you are held to days shelf life remaining, or if you're looking at additional information as far as expiring inventory, we can do reports that would then show you some of that countdown and consumption information if that was something that was important to you. All right. All right, let's talk material availability check. So you may have noticed back on my workbench, oops, Didn't like that. Anybody? Let me stop for just a second. Let me try again. Thank you. Thank you. See, here come the California jokes. I knew it. It's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. All right. Take it easy, guys. You know, all right. Got my flip-flops on here. All right. Thank you for that. On the planner's workbench here, so on my order recommendation page, as you all know, I've got it sorted by priority, so critical and high. This availability shortage column, I've got some indicators here telling me that these are make items that have a component problem. And I'm gonna, as a planner, potentially need to take a look at it, see if there's something I can do, something I want to evaluate, maybe not blindly approve these orders and take a look at component availability. This particular part, B25, it's got a shortage problem. On the availability review tab, you've got a lot of information here. So this is telling me the components that I've got a problem with, their current on-hand inventory, quote unquote physical, and then the running on-hand inventory balance. So you can see here for this particular item, B25, I've got a problem with the label and the preform. If I wanted to see the entire status of the bill of material, I can use this leverage this little toggle here. And now you can see the preform has actually got work orders pegged against it with no issue. It's just this new order recommendation is going to have a problem. Okay, so there's lots of cool stuff you can do here. One other thing you could look at and maybe relevant to you is on the bill of material tab, you can start to see the quantity per information. So we saw that label LB25, it's 12 per every B25 that I make. And that's how this figure is coming out here. I'm not sure if you're aware, there's this modal pop out, which is pretty slick. So if I was working on two monitors or two screens, I've got my B25 information pulled up, but let's say I was trying to look at different components, so we're back to that ABC classification stuff we talked about. If I start drilling down on other items on my workbench, this second screen or this pop out will update also. So you can see as you're trying to work through, things start to go a lot quicker. And then you can do pegging however you want to chop up the information. All right. Let me show you one other thing back in my presentation if I don't screw it up. I know Dan is going to be showing some of the Power BI reporting. I wanted to just highlight this in that scenario. You know, we continue to run into constrained environments, component constrained environments. On the Power BI side of the house, there is the Bill of Material Explorer and a where used graph. So both visually and from kind of a reporting standpoint, you start to say, okay, if I've only got 1,000 widgets and they go to 10,000 assemblies, what am I going to use them on? And you start to be able to make those decisions as you're working through kind of a workbench environment. Okay, hopefully everybody can still see my screen here. I'm gonna move this little Zoom guy. The next thing I want to touch on was part transition. So again, in today's world and environment, moving from part A to part B, or in this example that I've got up on the screen, we're going from part number 150971, and we're going to roll revisions. We're going to Rev 1. Through the part transition, you can start to set up effectivity dates. How long are we going to run the new part or the alternative? This doesn't imply that you're making a BOM change. This is just in this environment. You can set start dates and end dates. You can do ADU link methods, meaning you can have the ADU be either additive, where you're combining the usage onto the new part. So it's the old part plus the new part in case it had any usage on it. You can do things like link the net flow or not. The example I'm going to show you here, I just wanted to call out that on the right-hand side is the legacy part. On the right-hand side is the legacy part. On the left-hand side is the new revision. What I'm highlighting here is that there's an open purchase order for the legacy part. And because I had the net flow linked, you can see now that that PO is reflected in the net flow on Rev 1. All right, so you're not going to be getting a duplicate order recommendation if you've already got an inbound order for the new revision, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's specific to your environment, specific to the scenario, but that function is there. Okay. Yes. No, you can do any. You got it. Yeah. So great question. So if you're not in a revision controlled environment, which a lot of folks aren't, you could link parts however you like. You're going from blue pens to black pens, et cetera, et cetera. Great question. Let's hop back into the tool. Okay, next one, which I think is really slick. I know Eric had the new flashy menu. I don't have that in my environment yet. Is the part simulator. So let's take a look at a part in the part simulator. Back to kind of one of our reoccurring themes is running scenarios and seeing, do we have the right settings for our strategy? Are we going to hit the goals we want to hit? Do we have our parts configured the right way? And what would be the impacts if we made changes? This part simulator allows you to evaluate not only your buffer sizing, buffer strategy, you have the capability with this toggle where I can evaluate my buffer settings looking forward. So this current visual is based on a forecast that's been loaded for this part. You can see it rolling out into May of 2024. I'm achieving a 100% service level based on the current settings. My average inventory is 66,000 units, and you can see the dollar value associated. I want to call that out and kind of have you keep your attention there, because now we're going to look at it if I run based on demand history. So let's say, hey, you know, what if I didn't believe into the forecast? Let's say I wanted to evaluate it looking a different way, right? You can see the shift there. Based on usage, I would say that maybe the forecast might be understated, right? Because you can see the big, if we were going to do based on usage calculations, our average inventory would be quite a bit higher. Same with the units. Right? So lots of different ways you can slice and dice. You have settings down here where you can mess with service levels. You can mess with lead times. Let's say your supplier said, hey, now you have an MOQ, it's 10,000. You can see what that financial impact would be. Does that make sense with the current settings you have or not? We talked a little bit earlier, I think Deborah mentioned about adjustment factors. Same scenario where you're able to go through, you can apply an adjustment factor. Does that solve your problem or not? Is that something you want to do within your relevant range of time or not? So lots of cool stuff there. Okay. This particular side of the house on the materials planning is infinite capacity. So there's some rough cut views that you can evaluate looking through the S&OP module, but this particular analysis would not be looking at capacity. Yeah, great questions. Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, for the folks that are on the Teams meeting, what I could have mentioned also is that if you have settings that you've come up with that you've established that you like, you can simply hit that save part settings. That'll copy over to the part editor, and you'll be off and running. Great catch. All right, let's talk load optimizer. I'm going to jump back into the workbench. Pull up one of my trusty saved views here. All right, with some item setup, as long as it has a common unit, and both it can be a common packaging unit, what you have the ability to do is then use that prioritize share logic that Deborah had mentioned. So as an example, I'm going to go ahead and select orders. and I'm going to go into my manage order screen. And you can see that the tool is making order recommendations without any limitations. And what I want to do is, let's say I want to load 26 pallets on a truck, and I want the tool to tell me, what do I need to do to accomplish that so I get a full truckload? In some instances, it will round your values up, and in some instances, it may round your values down to optimize the load. What we've been seeing more and more is that people are also using it with using a packaging unit of hours. So you can start to do some capacity evaluations here. In this scenario, let's say I've got 40 hours in this particular environment, and you'll see the quantities change here. So current status, based on no additional information, the tool is recommending 8.3 hours of this particular item, 157866. If we wanted to optimize it out and limit it down, instead I've only got 40 hours available, you'll start to see the tool make changes. Same thing on packaging quantities or pallets. If I wanted to go backwards, let's say I'm not concerned with pallets or with hours. I'm more concerned with pallets because I'm trying to fill the truck. Same thing going the other way. Okay, so really cool. And lots of kind of neat ways you can leverage this tool in a different way. Or dollars. Yeah. Again, for the folks on the team, you can also do it with dollars. In case you were trying to get up to a free freight quantity, lots of different cool stuff. I'm going to jump back in. Okay, I'm going to stay on the PowerPoint here for just a second. So our distribution module, we have indicated with these little trucks. It's probably hard to see, but you see these little 53 footers next to these part numbers. And what this is telling me is that these items are sourced from a sourcing unit called the plant. So the plant is providing FPA to region 1, region 2, and region 3. And based on the buffer penetration at the various regions, the plant is making deployment quantities or deployment volumes out. So instead of kind of that pull mentality, we're now doing a push method where the plant is being told, hey, you need to push this many units out to region 1. You need to push this many units out to region 2. Eric mentioned one of our automotive customers has had a huge success with 2 deployments, one in Mexico, one in North Africa, leveraging this, where now it's getting back to that automation. As long as the buffer penetration is accurate at the locations or at the regions, you eliminate, well, I'm going to give Wally 50 and I'm going to give Eric 100. The tool is making those recommendations based on inputs. You do have the ability to modify those quantities. If you get a phone call and there's some emergency, the building's burning down, the planner knows best. You can modify those order recommendation quantities, but that's typically an afterthought. Okay. One last thing I want to show you is multi-source. When we jump back into the workbench. And I have my trusty part PPJ here. I'm going to go back into my manage orders screen. And let me make this a little smaller so I can see it. Okay, so I've got an order recommendation for 2,600 pieces coming from my vendor Sony for PPJ. Because I've established and set up an alternate source in the source editor, I can now, let's say that for whatever reason I don't want to buy from Sony, I'm going to go buy from First One Bearings. You'll see that the request state changed. What's happening here is that if you're maintaining multiple source item master information, as an example, I can get the part from Sony in 10 days. If I wanted to buy it from First One Bearings, it's going to take 30 days. The tool will recognize that and then modify the order recommendations as appropriate. So you do need to maintain the alternate source information, but as long as you're doing that, when you go to do an order approval, you can then make those adjustments as needed. Okay. Great question from I don't know, do you want to take that one?
If you want to have two vendors, you want 70%, 30%.
So the question was about, do we have percentage allocations or quota allocations within a multi-source environment? We don't have that functionality today. It's on our roadmap. You'll hear about that a little bit later this afternoon. It's in plan for fourth quarter or something like that. It's a tricky topic because everybody's got different ratios. Some people want to do it on a cycle where we order this one from you and then it's a long story, but we expect to implement some functionality around that. There's lots of different ideas about how best to do that. So we've had a little trouble getting a good fix on what's the best way, you know, the most universally applicable or whatever. You can actually select more than one vendor. You take that recommended order, you can break it into 2 or 3 different batches manually, but yeah, not automatically.
Great question.
The buffer profile is not changing. It's just allowing the order recommendation to be altered, if that makes sense. Yeah, the buffer profile and the target inventory levels are all going to be based on the primary vendor that you've loaded in the part record. It will not change just because you altered that order value.
Someone Wally said that it was going to change. That's just to reflect if there's a different pack out or something.
Yeah, they have different lead times, and we have different pack sizes and MOQs and things like that. So we'll force you to respect those lead times and order policy recommendations, which may not be the same as the primary vendor's attributes.
Yeah, and I pulled up here, so under our editors, this is the part source editor, so this is just that sample part with PPJ. So I've got it coming from ABC Exports, it's got a lead time of 7 days, they have an MOQ. If I was to buy it from First One, which is the secondary vendor, like Eric mentioned, so the lead time is now 20 days from them, however, but it would just be for that particular order recommendation, no buffer impact. Yeah, great question. And that's what I had for you. I know they say people from California don't talk fast, but we can talk fast. So, couple minutes for questions. Any questions? From anybody except for Rita.